All right, chat's enabled.
Lovely. All right, guys, we are going to get started with that. Chat should be enabled, so you should be able to introduce yourself with a quick 1 to 2 sentence bio and your LinkedIn URL. But I'm just going to get started with the event as we get our final people trickling in. They'll come in on their own time, but we're super excited to do this on behalf of Trufan, RDB, and the DMZ. We really appreciate you guys taking your time and having your lunch with us. As well as thank you to all the speakers who are going to be talking today for sharing your insights and making some time to do this. A quick housekeeping thing before we get into our first panel right away. This event is being recorded, so the recording of the event will be sent to you after via your email. So you will get a recording of this event that you can rewatch. Also, all the speakers that are here today are really awesome. They're also really approachable, so feel free to connect with them on LinkedIn after. Also connect with each other, so please do introduce yourself in the chat. And there is a Q&A button, which I actually never knew Zoom could do this, but I'm very happy they can, where you can ask questions. So during the panel, if you have a question for any of the attendees, any of the speakers that are on the panel, feel free to put the question in the Q&A section, and I'll make sure that I ask that question to the speaker after they're done talking. If we get a lot of questions, I'll make sure to prioritize the ones that I don't think have been touched on yet. But I do have a job of making sure that we end at 1 p.m. So, and this also goes for moderators. If we're running over time, I will cut you off and I will be very, very rude. So that's kind of all from me. Again, thank you all for joining. And without further ado, we'll get started. And I'll have Natasha from the DMZ, one of North America's leading startup accelerators, introduce the first panel. Natasha, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Wish. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here virtually with you all. My name is Natasha Campania. As Wish mentioned, I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications at the DMZ. For those of you who don't know what the DMZ is, in, I guess, simple terms, we help startup companies grow their business. We provide them with mentorship, workshops, and hold them accountable to their goals. Fun facts, Swish was actually just graduated out of our accelerator program at the DMZ, and Sam, who I'm about to get to introduce herself, is a current founder in our incubator program. So let's get right into it. Sam, maybe we can start with you. If you can take 30 to 45 seconds to quickly introduce yourself.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much, Natasha, and thank you everyone for being here and joining us today. Super excited about this. So as Natasha mentioned, I am Samantha. I am the co-founder of Clout, which is a company that we are currently part of the DMZ incubator program. We are a smart assistant tool and campaign management solution for influencers in the space to really just one-stop shop to track everything that's going on in their business. And aside from this, my background in working and building this is having been a professional creator for the past 5 years.
Awesome. Farokh, over to you.
Hey guys, my name is Farokh. I'm a 25-year-old entrepreneur, CEO of Goodlife Media and Communications. I specialize in branding, marketing, and building communication strategies online for clients, customers, whether they're people or brands, tangible and intangible goods, in order to build them, a marketing plan online, just push them out there, especially on Instagram.
Cool. Thank you both for joining us. We're really excited to have you. So let's start off with the first question and something fun. Many social media pros and agencies continue to say, create a brand personality, and something we've all heard over and over, but can each of you provide us an example of a brand, preferably an individual or company that you have no ties to, that is winning when it comes to creating a brand personality that's actually resonating with their target audience? Whoever wants
to
to
go first.
I'll let you go first. You started.
Well, I'll jump in. So I love that question. I think there's so many people at so many different levels creating incredible brands. So you don't need to be someone with, 30 million followers. You can be 30,000 and be creating something that's awesome and resonating with your audience. When you were saying this question right off the bat, I thought of Lauren Everett's from The Skinny Confidential. if you guys don't know her or you're interested in learning more about the influencer space and personal branding, she actually shares a lot of how she's built her brand. And she has about 1 million followers on Instagram that encompasses their incredibly successful podcast, her blog. She really encompasses something that's unique and creates branding and a very similar image across every platform that communicates exactly what she's sharing with her audience. And it's very clear. The same way you would pick up Kleenex at the pharmacy, it's Lauren Everett's, it's the Skinny Confidential when you look at her product. So I think she's doing an incredible job in the digital space.
Thank you. So follow Lauren. Farokh, over to you.
I'd like, when it comes to like building a personal brand, mostly I think on Instagram, which is something that I resonate with and talk about a lot. On my page, of course, the go-to, I don't want to sound generic, but it would be Gary Vee, because they're the one doing it right when it comes to like creating content and putting it out there with a good purpose, like without the purpose necessarily like wanting to take something away from their followers when it comes to like selling a product or anything. So I think they're in terms of personal branding, they're the best people to look up to know what to do and how to keep up with trends as well, because they're always on top of everything. But another one would be, it's just a personal friend of mine who's Andy Frisella, who I think conveys his message very well and manages to remain authentic to his word, to himself, to his principles, and just to build a very strong, powerful community, because like community building is by far the most important thing on the social media space right now. And I think that these two people have managed to go beyond just the screen and the phone and just really build a family. I think these two are really people to look up to when it comes to personal branding on Instagram.
Awesome. I think both of you on that community part, I think both of you have an awesome community of followers. I've been reading your comments, and a lot of people look up to you for great advice.
Thank you.
On to the next question. It's clear that reaching new audience requires a mix of creative ideas and collaboration with influencer partners. What kind of criteria do you look for in an influencer partnership? Farokh, maybe we'll start with you this time.
Sure. Before even hiring an influencer for any job, I make sure I scan through their pages, and you want them to be as authentic as possible, of course, when it comes to like followers, likes, engagement, and stuff like that. But that's just the first part. That's great. They can have a lot of likes even if they're real, but if they don't have a community and a real authentic message, then there's no point in working with them. Because put away all the side, like, okay, some influencers don't have an authentic following, but let's take the ones who do. So before I even look into those and I select them for my customers, my clients, I make sure that they're capable of having an impact. Because are you really an influencer if you don't have any influence? I rather hire someone who has 500 followers that will really listen to my client's message, and perhaps half of them will convert, rather than pay a 1 million follower influencer that will convert to 2 people. And I've been there and I've seen it happen. So I think that really looking into the authenticity of the influencer or analyzing if it has any sort of influence is the most important part.
And just on that note, I guess, how do you actually know who has like bought their followers versus actually has a true following? Like, what are some principles when looking through people's pages that you look for to ensure that they have real followers versus bot followers?
It's very, very tough, especially now that Instagram has also removed likes. But in Canada, You can't see likes, for example. I know in a lot of places as well. You can from desktop, but you want to see the like-comment ratio. But even in the comments, you want to go look at the comments. Like, are they generic? Are they not? You want to look at the views. Sometimes they forget that their likes and their views don't match up on the video. That's somewhere where they slip a lot. Or you use a bunch of different, tools. I know, Trufan here. I don't want to advertise anyone. I know Trufan, and now with Social Rank, they have access, like back-end data access to influencer pages. So it's very easy to see when an American-based influencer has 75% followers in India, like, something's off, So it's just like, you want to look at all those metrics, those numbers, and see if they add up. Usually if you use common sense, that's really what works.
Awesome. Sam.
I love that note. I think that's fitting perfectly with the micro space as well, and just viewing how brands can really find their targeted audience. If your product has a specific, if you're very honed in on who your audience is from a product or a brand, it's easy to find the right people that fit with you. And like Farokh said, it doesn't need to be someone with 1 million followers. There's a lot of people that are actually better heard in the micro space, also in the macro space, but in the micro space, particularly to specific audiences. So if you're a brand and you're clear on what your message is, it becomes a lot easier to align with the right influencers. And just, a quick note about what's going on right now, and I can speak to that because I think in this world, we're not going to, we can say, well, when we get back to normal, like when we get back to normal, whatever that is, we're in this now, we're facing what we're facing now. I don't see, it won't be back to what it was. We will not go back to quote unquote, whatever normal, whatever people are calling normal.
Normal didn't work.
Yeah, exactly. And so we need to view it as it is right now and build off of this moment. And right now we're seeing a lot of brands honing in on who they're aligned with, how they're choosing their influencers, and what the messages they're communicating. It's not just they have tons of followers or they're posting a great shot that people are like, okay, awesome. It's informative content. It's inspiring their audiences. How are they listening and why are they making that connection with the people? And we are seeing those influencers actually grow continuously in this market and continue to make more brand deals. And we're seeing influencers that are not putting out content that's helping or educational, etc., kind of slowing down and hoping to go back to the normal. But I think we need to adjust.
Awesome. Yeah. Both of you have a huge following, and a big part of your job is coming up with new content that's relevant to your audience. How do you come up with new content on such a regular basis, and where do you look for inspiration when posting?
Sam, you want to
go? Yeah. I mean, I think I might be a little bit different of a case than you. I'm still in the micro space, and I really try to keep my communication very authentic, and I do plan significant parts of it, but a lot of my relationship with my audience comes from being on a whim and comes from being organic and, hey, here's what I'm doing, curating stories a little bit, but the roughness is what people like to see. Yeah. And it also depends on your audience. If you've built a brand from the beginning that is, looks like a magazine, shows up like a magazine, then that's what your audience is showing up for, and that's what they want. But to continuously create content that's sort of fitting with how you've built that audience, if you throw them different stuff, then they're lost. So for me, it's a lot of organic stuff as it comes up. I share a lot of fitness tips, workouts, and things that I really fit with me. So I talk from my heart. I talk to, I do keep a master content list when I'm looking at things that I want to remember to share, because late at night you sit in bed and you're like, oh, I need to post about that. But at the end of the day, it's really, okay, how can this help people right now? It's affecting me. I'm feeling it. I don't know, COVID, health, we're at home, we're not moving as much, whatever that is, it's affecting me right now. So it's probably affecting other people. So it's worth and of value to share.
Thank you.
I think she's absolutely right about the authenticity part. And I think that for the biggest barrier for someone to become an influencer in a personal brand is posting. It's the number one barrier. Okay. The second you smash that barrier is when you really get your brand going. It doesn't matter if you have 5 followers or 5 million. Who cares about that? You have to break that chain of posting, because that means you don't care about the perception of other people. And when you ask me like, where I create my content from, I create from here, and from here, and nowhere else. I post when I want, if I want. If I don't want to post for a week, I'm not going to post for a week. I know they say, oh, you have to post regularly, but I think that you should follow your heart and your guts and the way it goes. And that's where you convey a better, more authentic message. So when I sit down on my phone, I'm like, okay, Farokh, now you must post. It never worked for me. It
never does well.
Yeah, the other night I have insomnia. I'm in my thoughts. It's 4:30 in the morning. I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to post. I wake up, there's 12,000 likes on the picture. So it's just like, it's not a time thing anymore. It's not really, people are, like you just said, COVID, everything, it's changed. People are online around the clock. There's always somebody, there's always half of the world that's going to be awake anyways to look at your content. So might as well just go ahead, post your content, not be worried about anything, and just be as authentic as possible. And it doesn't need to be something crazy. It can be a selfie. It can be a tweet. It can be anything on any platform. I think that you just should go ahead and post and just make sure that it comes from within, especially if you're a personal brand. Just share something. You went out on a stroll, share that. You're just working out, share your workout. Of course, like, you can have a master list and organize yourself. This is perfect, and you should. But when it comes to posting the actual piece of content, I think should just go for it. There's nothing that should stop anyone, or the aesthetics. Very often, after the barrier of entry, which is like breaking that glass, the second biggest barrier is, are we scared of our aesthetics and how our page is going to look? The second I stopped caring about the way my page looked, I started posting like up to 10 times a week, because I just stopped worrying about it. So I think you should just go ahead. This is what drives me personally.
Awesome. we have a couple more questions, but I want to make sure we have time for questions from the audience. So maybe I'll do one more question and then we can open it up. Influencer marketing has evolved over the past 5 to 10 years. How do you think the current pandemic will change influencer marketing in a post-COVID-19 world?
That's a good question. I mean, I think influencer marketing has become probably, or anything online, more important than ever. And we've seen that. I mean, a lot of my clients are like people who had retail stores right now, and they're like, well, I need help. You know, I had to shift. I'm not going to open before 2021 for the most part. Like, what am I supposed to do? And I think, if anything, we are literally right now at not a peak, because every peak has a downfall, but I mean, like, we're at a spot in time where influencer marketing has become more important than ever. And the good thing about COVID, but the good thing, it's not a good thing, but I mean, like, there's a side to it. Also, all these influencers that were not real influencers got wiped out. Because all the people who couldn't sustain a real influence or anything, or just step up to the plate during COVID, they're gone. They were not real influencers to start with. So right now we're seeing a point in time where there's a lot of emerging influencers, there's a lot of authenticity, and there's a lot of traffic. So influencer marketing right now is more important than ever.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with that. The authenticity that we're seeing rise from this pandemic is incredible, and brands are loving it as well. We're really seeing people's true self. Just to that aesthetic conversation that you said quickly, people don't really have that ability right now. They don't have photographers, no sets. Like, you know, you're working with your house, and it's how many corners can you work with your tripod, or, you know, your God bless husband, boyfriend, whoever will take your photos. But I think we're really just seeing, like, it's ripping off that shield. You can't care as much anymore. It's really the authenticity moving forward. I also think it's really interesting because we're seeing people have the time to explore other platforms and continue to expand their brand, just from our users as well within Clout Jam, people who are maybe launching their own websites from it, or who are dabbling into YouTube or more, I guess, search engine based places. TikTok's blowing up, right?
Yeah,
so we're seeing a lot of other platforms that influencers are starting to dabble in. They might have a little bit more time, or they might say, hey, my content, you know, this is where it's living as my landing page, but I have content that fits on other places. And I just think brands are getting really, really real. We're going to see a diminish in the influencers who aren't bringing value, but aren't also bringing a lesson. They aren't bringing something to share that's of value, educational, motivational, whatever it is. And we're seeing the people who are really propel. And I think those people are actually going to take a bigger cut of the cake right now. And they're going to thrive on it and continue to do so in a very successful way. And, you know, we're seeing that with a lot of our users. On my side, on the Fit Fatale, like, just, it's interesting what brands are reaching out on is not what they were before. It wasn't, hey, I have this product, you want to post it? It's like, oh, can you host a live meditation? Like, our product has nothing to do with meditation, but we really want to bring them into this moment that affects, you know, what's going on with COVID. Like, it's the reasoning and intent behind the content that they're appealed to, I think, right now.
Definitely.
Awesome. Thank you. Swish, over to you for the questions that are coming in from the audience.
Yep. Appreciate everyone who submitted their questions. I'm going to try to go through this in a rapid fire rate because I know we got about 5 minutes, but let's start off with Claire's question. So to either of you, when working with an influencer where there's a match going forward, how does that work? Is it payment? Is there a product? Is it a percentage of sales going forward? Claire finds it to be a gray area, and she'd love for some clarity over how the influencer deal is normally structured.
I would say just make sure that there's not one way to work with an influencer. It can be payment upfront, half, or a revenue share deal. It depends on the influencer. So I think that you should, first of all, go with intent of what you're trying to do when you own a brand. Okay, I am not ready to pay this much, it's my budget, or I'm willing to offer a 10%, 20% rev share. But make sure, and that's where often it goes south, and then we go, oh, influencers say that, oh, the brands are mean. No, make sure from the get-go that your money, or like the deal is on the table and is set over with, so you don't have to worry about it later. So you go to the influencer or influencer and say, listen, this is my product, this is how much I'm willing to pay, this is how much revenue share I'm willing to do. Make your deal, just like anything. It's just like any business transaction. Just so you do with an influencer, just another human being. You make a deal, you put it on paper, and then you go ahead and you send your payment or you do a rev share. But every case and every influencer for me that I've worked with is different. But also as an influencer myself, I've always made sure to set that on the table. I want this amount for my post, and you pay me there, and then we move from it.
Right. I can just speak from the Clout Jam side. We, exactly what you do with your influencers, that's sort of what we provide, well, that is what we provide to them, so that they have that information readily available. It's like, this is what the brand's expecting you. This is the amount, these are the exact posts, these are the dates that go up. You're running a business. If there's a financial transaction, you need to look at yourself like an entrepreneur in a business and show up that way each day. And so it comes from what the influencer values their time at and what the brand's willing to do. You find a happy medium. And, everyone's different in how they value. If you have kids, your hour might be worth way more right now because you need to pull yourself away from that. If you're at home alone in your condo, that might be a totally different experience. So.
Great. Awesome. And then another quick question was from Daniela. She asked, could we have the hashtags for the 3 Instagram leaders that were mentioned quickly?
Hashtags or the handles?
The handles, sorry, yeah.
So the one that I mentioned was the Skinny Confidential. She does like really deep into beauty, fitness, health. Do you want me to type it out?
Yeah, you can type it out after. That'd be great. Yeah, 100%. That'd be awesome. And then a question for both of you. What are your top 2 community building tips and tactics? And this is from Chelman.
Answer, be as active as possible. There's no secret to community building. The secret they're trying to sell you is that there's no secret, is that you have to be as active as possible. I went from 100,000 followers to 240 in 4 months, from 50 comments average to 600, from 1,000 likes to 10,000. And I'm not different than anybody else on this panel or watching me right now. I'm just more active than you are. It's like certain people in certain areas. So I answer every comment on my post. I don't answer every DM because it's tough, and also some questions you just can't, but I try to be as active and as real as possible. So through authentic content, through activity, show people some love. Followers are not followers, they're not fans, they're not robots, they're human beings, they're living and breathing organisms. So the second you treat your page, your comment section like an ecosystem of living people, and you start treating them like that, they're going to treat you back the same way. This is exactly how you build a real community, not a following.
Oh, I love that. I agree with that completely. And the answering people, taking the time to really engage them. I have obviously a much smaller audience, so I have the ability to do that. But if someone's asking, like, I can have 30 people in the same day ask the same question, and I will take the time to go and find the link that they want. Go and get, maybe it's a TikTok video I put up that explains whatever, how I did my hair, like whatever you're doing, connect with them and also have a real communication. And like you said, it's a person behind the phone or however they're communicating with you. Look at it like it's your best friend on the other line. I speak the way I would talk to anyone. I'm always like, hey girl, oh my gosh, yeah, try this out. Like, it makes that real communication, and then you break that barrier between you being a robot on the other side. And that's what Instagram stories has allowed us to do.
100%.
We would not have the ability to do that.
But also, time being the most valuable thing that anyone has.
Yes.
And you guys would understand, when you give someone even 10 seconds of your time to like their comment, that's already you giving that's already showing appreciation towards somebody. You never know when they see it on the other side of the line. So I think that's so important.
And they're very appreciative. They're always saying, thank you. Like, thank you.
Yes.
For your time. Thank you that you answered. You're like, what do you think? Like, my job.
When you used to, I don't know if you guys have seen The Last Dance, Jordan said, every single time I show up to the game, because these people give 3 hours of their days to watch me play, no matter the game. Well, these people take time out of the day to watch your stories, but there's so many people out there they're watching you.
Mm-hmm.
You're not watching the other 1.1 billion users there are on Instagram. So appreciate that and don't take those followers for granted. I think is the most important thing.
Amazing. Okay, final 2 questions. There are quite a few that are still opened. So if I didn't get to your question, I'm really sorry, but Hasib did a great job and he put down Samantha and Farokh's usernames that you can connect with them directly after on Instagram or LinkedIn and ask them your question. But Amir asked, how do you gauge if an influencer has fake followers? There are many influencers with millions of followers but only get less than 100 comments. How do you gauge that?
Do you want to go? I mean, we just said that in the
panel, we kind of touched on it a bit. I mean, like you said, it's common sense a bit. I think also in the macro space, like macro, if they're in the millions, people are less engaged and want to communicate with them less, same sort of way. So it is hard. You need to gauge at that stage. But I think, seeing their impact, if you're looking from a brand perspective, you can ask them for stats. Like, that's probably the easiest if you don't feel like diving into
as for backend, as for instance.
yeah, ask for backends, ask for like, what are your swipe ups? Okay, what are your average clicks? And influencers want to be true about that, because I don't want to tell you I have 1 million clicks when I'm going to not be able to provide that for your brand. You're not going to sign me back. I'm going to be authentic, and then I'm going to under promise, over deliver.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have a long-term partnership because you're impressed by what I can bring to you. So
Cool, amazing. And final question, how would influencer marketing work for a B2B SaaS company? So if you're selling software, you know, that doesn't really seem like a natural fit for selling to enterprises, and Abhijit is wondering, how would you go about working with influencers?
I think you're better off than me answering that one.
I mean, I'm smack dab in the middle of that, right? We have a SaaS product, but it's designed for influencers. So if influencers like it and want to talk about it, it's fitting because they're selling it to their product. I think it's gauging it at every level. There's influencers in every space. And once you can realize that and find the right people, it is possible as well. We were just chatting about this, but the term influencer is not a new thing. We just now have associated to a specific topic when it comes to digital, when it comes to social media, but there have been influencers since the beginning of time, whether that was someone wearing something and walking down the street, or whether it was magazines, like however that's evolved. And so whatever your product is, even if that's in the SaaS space, find the right people that fit with it. I mean, there's multitude of those, products that we provide something for influencers. So it's a little bit
exactly
for influencers to talk to it, but I think finding the right people, and if you have influence in car sales and everyone listens to you, go there. Just take the time, and it can take time for brand side though, if it's a little bit more complicated than like fashion or something.
Find someone who fits the ethos of your brand. Find someone who fits it, so you don't break any brand equity and stuff like that. It takes longer, of course, to promote a SaaS, but you can find the right person for sure just by digging a little deeper.
And it has potential for long term too. It's not just a one.
Hell yeah.
Amazing. All right. Thank you guys so much. Honestly, thank you so much, Natasha, for moderating this amazing conversation, and to Samantha for being on it. We're now going to get right into the second panel on paid advertising. It's going to be moderated by Karen O'Brien. She's a global marketing executive, also an investor in Trufan. So Karen, the floor is yours, and you can get the paid advertising panel started.
Hey everyone, really excited to be here and have a conversation about paid ads. We've got two amazing panelists joining us, Henny and Rochelle. So I would ask if you two can introduce yourselves.
Sure. Yeah, I'll go first. My name is Rochelle Hariri. I've been in digital marketing and social media for the past 10 years, working for technology companies, food and beverages, and where else? Nonprofit organizations. In my experience, I've helped a lot of different brands with building up their social advertising, their social marketing, and social brand building. I've also taught digital marketing at BrainStation and Red Academy in Toronto.
Awesome. Well, my name is Hedy, and I'm the founder of Line Marketing Agency, and we specialize in helping small, medium, and large businesses do all their digital marketing for them. But our bread and butter is paid ads, and that's why you see us here. And we have won multiple awards for delivering great results for our clients using platforms such as Facebook, you name it, the social media ones.
That's great. So we're going to dive right into some questions, and either one of you feel free to answer. So we've seen that a lot of small businesses are really ramping up their social and digital presences during COVID-19. And a lot of them are a bit apprehensive about what the right approach is for them. And if they're looking at paid ads, where do you think they should get started?
Sure, I can go first and then pass it over to Henny. I think if you have a small business and you're starting with your paid advertising right now, a few things that you need to ask yourself are, number one, have you done paid ads before? If you have, what's the experience that you've seen? What performance have you held? What information or learnings do you have to bring forward to now in a time of a pandemic and COVID? Secondly, I think you need to really understand what your audience is and what product it is that you're selling. What industry and vertical are you in? Identify who your audience is and understand which platform they're most likely to spend their time on, and then create a plan, like literally create a brief for yourself of, this is my audience, these are the areas that they're interested in, here's how I'm going to talk to them, this is my mission, this is my goal in setting up ads.
Yeah, no, those are amazing points. I think for many small businesses, I think you have to think about your ads as another sales team. at the end of the day, it's that one team that's always going to be working for you in the background when you're not, right? So when you are thinking about running ads, you have to say, how can I sell my product and service online and reach my audience straight through? Now you don't have to wait for them. You're going straight to them. So it's important that you identify that. And like Rochelle said, create a small brief, understand what you're really trying to target, and then go for it there.
I think a lot of business owners think that they need to spend a lot of money to get started or even to execute a paid ad campaign. Could you speak a little bit about what the right budget level is, or at least a beginning sort of budget, or how to think about budget?
Yeah, I can take this one. So yeah, like you said, most people think they have to spend thousands of dollars a month to get these kind of results. But on most platforms like Facebook and Instagram, you can start as low as $25 a day for your first month to see all the split testing that you can do and see which one wins. And then you can minimize your budget as low as $10 a day if you really want to, and go and continue that platform and just push that for sure.
If I can add to Henny, I think being a small business, it's really important for you to understand how much you're able to set aside for your advertising. Nothing is free anymore. I mean, in some cases you can really build community. And if you're one of those brands that's lucky enough to already have a community of advocates, thousands of people that are following you and engaging with you, that's fantastic. But if you're, let's say, a startup or a small company that's just getting started, just put aside how much you think. And to Henny's point, how much can you potentially spend each day? And once you've actually started your testing, let's say you put $50, $100 a day towards your marketing, watch the ads, see how they're performing, see what's making you more sales, what's driving more customers to your website, to your landing page, how many people are actually clicking through, and continuously iterate on your ads. Make sure that you can't just set it and forget it. I mean, that's the beauty of social advertising and paid ads is you can constantly check. You can check on your phone while you're going grocery shopping and see what's performing and what's not, and make strategic decisions so that you're not wasting your money. Especially in this economy and having a small business, you want to make sure that you're effectively spending your dollars.
What should small business owners be cautious about when going into paid ads? Henny, do you want to address that?
Sure. I think they have to understand that right now it's a space where all these tech companies, also these social media platforms, are trying to understand what's happening in this world today too. So when you do launch your ads, or you're thinking about launching your ads, you have to understand that your message has to speak to your audience clearly. And even Facebook now is going through this whole shift that they are also not understanding what the space is. Like talking about COVID is such a hot topic right now that Facebook doesn't understand how to claim your ads at this point, right? So it's very important to understand your audience and make sure that when you are creating your campaigns, you're speaking to your audience. Forget about the environment that you're in, but also just be authentic. Same as what influencer marketing is and content marketing. You just got to be authentic with your ads, because it's how you make people feel with your ads that are going to make them purchase your product or your service. So it's important to do that, and also follow the guidelines that these platforms set out. So you have to follow their rules. Otherwise, your ads are going to get rejected. And because you're a small business, unfortunately, these big companies are going to take a long time to respond to you, right? So make sure you follow their guidelines and their blueprints so that your ads can be approved and launched.
Sure. Also, I think to add to that, some things that you need to be aware of are right now, based on research that I've done, some of the largest retailers and brands out there, about 75% of them have their products on sale right now. And so in order for you to also stand out, I mean, if you're on your phone and you're on Instagram or Facebook and you're scrolling, you're going to see tons of ads from different competitors. They're going to have really compelling offers. And now is the time for you to also create what your value prop and offering is to these consumers. Some tips and things that you can consider when you're creating these ads is, putting like a sticker or a blurb that says 50% off or 20% off, or free shipping is actually huge, especially for Canada and Canadians where shipping is so expensive. I believe there's a stat that said about 90% of consumers see value in free shipping from brands and retailers. And so if you're a D2C and you're shipping products or makeup or clothing, whatever it is, consider putting that value prop front and center in your ads so that your consumers know what they're buying. Also, there's research that shows within your ads, keep everything within the image grid as much as possible. Consumers, especially now, we're all restless, we're on our phones all the time. You don't necessarily spend the time reading the copy all the time. But if you see an image and it says, this is a nighttime serum, it's good for your skin. So it tells you what your product is, tells you what it does. There's a sticker that says it's 50% off, and there's free shipping for today only. It's much more competitive. It's much more compelling to consumers, and it'll ensure that they click through. And then you can kind of measure your ads and say, how many people, when I had this really compelling message, click through? How many actually made a sale? What else can I do to keep my ads running?
Some great tips in there. For small business owners who are trying to figure out what platform they should do advertising on, how do you recommend they get started? I mean, we've seen a lot of reports lately on, you know, the efficiency and the decreased CPMs of various platforms, but does that even mean that you should be on those platforms? How do you figure out what platforms as a small business owner to start with?
I can start that one. I think it depends on your product, your industry and vertical. Are you in automotive? Are you in clothing, makeup, and retail? There's some industries that are really like super easy to sell on Instagram or Facebook because that's the nature of the consumers that are on there and the products that they're looking for. But I think at the end of the day, you need to really pinpoint who is your audience. Is it men that are 35 to 45 who are interested in sports, who prefer, you know, a certain type of vacation, who have a certain salary and income? Where would they spend their time? Where do you need to advertise? Is it advertising on Facebook, or is it another mode of advertising that you want to spend your money on? Is it an influencer? Is it, you know, some sort of publication that you need to spend your money on? That's also the best way to start is you need to know your core. And I think most business owners at this point should have a good understanding of who's buying from them and what that potential audience could look like.
Yeah, those are great points. And I think what I would add to that is basically, if you're a business to consumer industry, it is important and very, very profitable if you're on Facebook and Instagram, because that's where most of your consumers are consuming their content, right? So having your ads show up between different contents that they already like, that is a platform to be on. But there's platforms like Pinterest, now the new TikTok platform that's coming out, that are undervalued. There's so much potential, especially if you're in that creative space within the B2C. Pinterest is such a powerful platform for you to be on. And they also have a training where you can launch your own ads. They teach you step by step on how to do it. And that's another way of utilizing a platform that not many people are doing, right? And now even Snap has reinvented their back end and have made it more powerful that you can also tap into there too if your audience is there. So it's not like you just want to reach out to all of them and throw money at them, but it's important, like Rochelle said, to understand where your audience is and then launch those ads on those platforms.
Mm-hmm. And just one more thing I would add is, I think right now we're speaking kind of high level with saying like you need to know where your audience is, but I'd recommend setting aside maybe just an hour or two in the morning when you're having your coffee, do some research on who your consumers are, look at your stats, your data and analytics, where are they buying from, what countries are they in, how are they getting to you? That should give you a good base. And then also just do some research. Like if you're a female and you're targeting men that are 50 plus and that's just not your thing, research them, figure out where are they into golf, what are they interested in, and then make sure to get through to those publications, those influencers, and those channels that they would be most likely on.
Yeah, and even to add even more onto that is you have customers that are already in your base. Why don't you quick email sign out and say, hey, how did you find us? How did you find the product? Do a quick survey on what it is that they really love about your product or service. That can honestly create an audience set for you right there too.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Swish is going to keep us on track here with Q&A.
Oh, man.
Hard stuff now. Thank you, Karen. Appreciate it. So first question from Irina. She said her company offers on-demand luggage storage for a large travel audience. Of course, travel right now is very impacted at this time. They've paused their paid advertising at the time as they strategize towards any advice towards what to do in the future. So her question is, are there any other platforms that could be ideal to communicate messaging best to hesitant travelers that are maybe on Google or Facebook or Instagram?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I think so. Sorry, the question, as I'm understanding it, is what other platforms should she consider?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think addition to like the standard where you have like Facebook, Instagram, etc., at a time like this, what I've actually noticed myself quite frequently is the use of influencers. And I know that was the panel before us, but I personally see marketing as like what's in your toolkit and what makes more sense for you to leverage. If you're running paid ads right now and you're seeing like, you know, medium success with it, what I'd also recommend is branching out to different travel influencers. Right now, the travel influencer community has had a major hit. And although marketing spends across the board for influencers have decreased about 20%, there's still an opportunity to work with these influential people to have them spread your message about your product, the optimism of the future of travel, or even if you're launching a new product, let's say based on the research that you found, that's for, you know, local travel at home, going to the cottage, etc. There's an opportunity to work with these people. But that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, to add on to that, I know that you pause your ad campaigns and we'll never tell you to keep going, especially in times like this, but it's important to also, if you have a budget set aside, this is the best time to do brand awareness. Not try to sell anything or do anything, but let people know that you guys still exist and this is your story. I think it's important during these times to keep everyone or your product or your service in mind for those people so that when you are ready to go back in, people already know you, they're gonna purchase through there. And also, like Rochelle said, I know there's a panel coming on content. This would be the perfect time to create organic content and talk about like platforms that are undervalued. Like I said, TikTok, go on that. That's such a new space where travel is such a big buzz too. Go on that, create content on that and see where that takes you to.
Got it. Sharia had a question for Rachel. I bet, Rochelle, you get Rachel quite a bit, but
sure do.
What did you study in university?
When I was in university, I got a Bachelor of Commerce from Ryerson. There's my degree right there. Got a Bachelor of Commerce. I focused on marketing and I minored in communications.
Cool, lovely. Next question, Imain. I'm sorry if I butchered your name. Really, really sorry, but Imain asked, does it make sense to spend on ads if you don't have a specific product that you offer year-round? So ads to specifically grow your audience to convert later on. What would be your strategy if you have a product that's more seasonal?
Good question.
That's interesting. I'd really like to know what the product is.
Yeah,
is it a shovel for like the winter time? Or, I honestly really think I would personally need to know a little bit more about your business and what your product is to be able to give you like a solid response on how to run it, depending on if it's seasonal. And let's just assume that the product is for the summer and spring season. So that's your focus. Definitely run your ads, run them as much as possible. If it's during off season, if you can find an opportunity to still connect with different audiences and build brand awareness, especially in Canada, we have 4 different seasons. So winter is always on people's mind, fall, spring, summer. So I don't think there's that it doesn't make sense, but it truly depends. Like if you're selling a shovel in the winter time, maybe right now pause your ads for a little bit and focus on other activities.
Yeah. I don't even know what I would add to that. I think we've got it spot on. I mean, at this point, it's about brand awareness. If you, during the off seasons, if you can spend $5 to $10, $25 a day on telling people what you do in those seasons and keeping them on top of mind, then that's the best result you're going to get during the off seasons for sure.
Perfect. Zainab asked, what is the best way to learn more about advertising on various social platforms, especially with how rapidly the algorithm is changing? Do you guys have any platforms or courses that you would recommend to learn about advertising? Yeah,
so actually all platforms have their own course or blueprint, and most people don't even know that. It sucks that those platforms don't advertise these courses and their programs, but each platform that you go on, if you want to learn about their backend, their ads, and how do you run your own ads, they all have courses for you available, as simple as a Google search saying Facebook advertising blueprint, or TikTok, or whatever platform you're on. It's even Google has a powerful course system in their backend that you can also learn from.
I would just add to that Henny and I collaborated before this, and we made a list of different courses and actually like content tools that you guys can use for small businesses, because we know not everybody has the time to do super lengthy courses that take 6 weeks, or you may not have a photographer or graphic designer on hand. So I know Swish and the team are going to share that with you. One other thing I would add is I find YouTube to be super helpful. Anytime I'm trying to look for more information, I go directly there. There's a lot of experts, and you can learn a lot in a matter of like a 3-minute video.
Lovely. Couple more questions. Julene asked, for anyone, you have any tips more specifically for marketing to businesses rather than consumers? And that actually kind of also fits into Janushka's question around B2B SaaS. How do you go about thinking about paid advertising when it's a B2B company versus a B2C company?
I think like with B2Bs, in my experience, LinkedIn and Twitter are a really great avenue. There's a lot of conversation. Again, depending on what industry and vertical you're in, LinkedIn is a little bit more expensive. But considering if you're B2B, let's say you have a larger sales budget or marketing budget, I definitely recommend going that avenue, as well as the publications and websites that you know these users would be on, connecting with them. If it's like a marketing technology website or blog, you can connect with them to make sure that you're pushing your product. Also, your own content on your website will not only help with your SEO, but it helps you drive users somewhere where they can learn a little bit more as you're building up your ads.
Yeah. So LinkedIn and Twitter are awesome. And I think I'll probably add Google. So it's still a powerful platform, CPC, especially if there's keywords that you know you're going to dominate in, especially as a B2B. I think that's where you should be spending your money. And again, evaluate the kind of results you're getting. It's not just if someone clicked on and say, oh, okay, I got a result there, but follow up, make sure you're using the right tagging so that you know people are coming from that specific link or ad campaign that you've launched. And then you can start leveraging that and creating new keywords that you can tap into also.
Actually, one other thing, if I can add, as you were talking, I was just thinking your email list is super important to you as B2B. What I would recommend as well is, as I was saying before, like create your content or create something that your users or potential B2B would find interesting, and then get them to sign up, get them to pass their email over to you so that you can pull them down into a sales funnel in a different area of your business and have someone reach out to them. I think that's also a good way of like using the ad as a hook to grab them and then get some information and carry on the conversation.
Amazing. And then Abhijit asked, what tools are you guys using to monitor your paid ad performance?
Good question. So it depends. So we honestly use the platforms itself, as their analytic tools are super powerful and you don't need another software to tell you that data that already exists. If there's any other tools, we use like Later if we're managing an account and we need to see their organic side to understand how we can use that to leverage their ad side. Other than that, we have tools for creatives that we're going to send you on that list that we use to create ads too, right? So it's important that you're doing both the front end and the back end to utilize all of that together.
Yep, I'd say same thing. Using the native platforms is the best way to go, like Facebook Ads Manager, Twitter Ads Manager, etc.
Cool. Final two questions. Jayton asked, how do you suggest and guide one to build an effective social media strategy? That is a very overarching question, but take a stab at it.
Okay, cool. I'll start this one. If you're building your strategy, which I've done for several really large brands and businesses, is starting with your core audience. Like, who are you going after? Identify who that is. From there, your next step will be like, okay, what platforms do I need to be on? That makes sense for this audience. You don't want to be on everything because sometimes it doesn't make sense. And if you don't have the manpower or the team, you're just going to exhaust yourself. Then determining which pillars of content are important to this group, working on your evergreen social plans plus your paid social plans. And then also setting up your goal, your targets, like what are your leading indicators? What is your idea of success of being on social media for your brand and your business? And then follow that through with a content calendar that gets really specific into like what you're doing on a monthly basis.
Yeah, like she nailed that. But if I was to add anything, like we said in the earlier question, it's about creating that brief. So starting from your audience, doing your research, like who are you trying to reach out to with all those different pillars of your marketing? And at the same time, it's what kind of message are you pushing out to these people, right? So are you just going to go out there and just sell your product, or are you going to tell them a story? Are you going to do a brand awareness, all of that? And your content, also your organic content has to align to what you're doing in the back end too, right? So because at one time, people are not going to buy it the first time they see your ad. They're probably going to buy it on the seventh time, right? At the same time, they're going to be searching out your brand, your industry, what you're doing, how involved you are. And then they're going to make that purchase. So it's important to create a streamline of different content on the ad side and on the content side that align together for you to sell your product or service.
Perfect.
And one more thing. Oh, sorry, Swish. One more thing. Henny and I are chatty. We like to talk. One more thing that I would add is do a competitive audit as well. I find that to be super helpful, just to know like who are your top 3-4 competitors? What are they doing? What channels are they on? Do you want to be on those platforms as well? And if you are, how are you going to stand out from your competitors?
Great point, Kamal. Perfect. That wraps up our paid advertising panel. Thank you, Karen, for moderating the panel, and thank you to Rochelle and Henny for taking your time out to share your insights. As I believe Hedy put into the chat, you can connect with them offline on Instagram or LinkedIn. And again, all the speakers that are speaking right now are very approachable, so feel free to reach out to them and ask them any follow-up questions or connect with them online. Final panel. Yep, sir. Did someone say something? No? Lovely. Bye. Final panel on content marketing. So we have Michael from Robin DuBois, or also known as RDB, a Vienna-based marketing agency doing some incredible work moderating this panel. So Michael, the floor is yours.
Hey, thank you. This has been an amazing panel, so thank you, Swish, for putting this together. Some fun stuff, the influencer marketing that we talked about. Thank you, Sam, Farokh, Natasha, and Rochelle, for talking about monetization, talking about authenticity. What we want to talk to today is about content in general, in terms of how does this all fit together? And when I think about content marketing, I come from a background of social at a Fortune 500 company. So I have to keep everything in mind, right? So basically full funnel marketing. How do we do awareness building? How do we retain people from top to bottom? So today I have with us Aparna, Director of Content Marketing at REMITR, and Neil from the Daily Hive, who runs client strategy and content. So let's get some definition around what content marketing is. I've got a few questions for you guys. So Aparna, give us 30 seconds on what you do for REMITR, and then we'll turn it over to Neil. Did I lose you guys? Aparna, yeah, there you go.
Hi. There we go. Let's try this again. At REMITR, basically the content marketing function serves to build a framework for what we offer to our clients. We try to build that personality of who we are and what our intention is and why we've been designed the way we have and what our purpose is and what we're trying to offer to our customers.
Cool. Neil?
Yeah, I'm Neil. I work for Daily Hive. We're a digital news publication, lifestyle publication, and I run our content studio. So the content studio is a team of writers, strategists, videographers, producers, and we create content on our site for our advertisers, and then we push that content out to our readers.
So in terms of what we heard in the earlier panelists talking about influencer marketing, there's PR that's involved, there's brand building, there's full funnel marketing. How do you guys think and act about that? And how do you work with other teams? Because I think that, influencer marketing and paid need to come under an umbrella of how does it work for the brand? How does it work for the company? How does it fit or meet objectives? Any tips, tricks, strategies that you guys can talk to?
Yeah, I think, so one thing to keep in mind is, in my opinion, content traditionally is a really good tool for awareness building. So you have to ask yourself, where in the funnel are you trying to capture someone? Are you capturing them near the bottom of the funnel, where you're looking for a conversion or a purchase, or are you capturing them near the top where you're just trying to get your brand out there and get people aware of who you are and what you do? So, you can use content in all facets of the funnel, but generally it's most widely used near the top. And that's where I find it's most effective. So when I do have clients come to me and they're asking about content and how can it work for them, one thing I like to ask them is, what other tactics are you using to your marketing plan, and and then make sure that what we do from a content side is complementary to those other pieces that you have out in the market.
Aparna?
Absolutely. And to add on to that, the function of content within the funnel itself is to smooth things out too, right? To address any friction points or get ahead of it as well, so that that process is as smooth and seamless as possible for people that are in that funnel. And it's also a great opportunity for you to build the brand story. And this is something that's not divorced from full funnel marketing. It is something that is very much hand in hand with it, but it's a longer play as well, because you're trying to do something that is foundational and that sets the tone and sets the purpose and builds that narrative for your company. And it may seem at times that it's not quite the value add that it is, but it is something that's worth investing time in.
So let me get a little bit more foundational and maybe talk about your ecosystem. So I think that, the panelists that we had before talked about the sexy stuff, talked about the awesome stuff that I have the most fun at, influencer marketing, working with RDB on hashtag live more, share more was amazing. We had, 40 influencers. We flew around the globe, had a ton of fun. But from a business perspective, we had to build that into what worked on a website, what worked in social, and show results full funnel, as we mentioned. So Aparna, talk to me about what that looks like at REMITR in terms of the balance of comms, website, social. What's been your experience?
Our experience at REMITR is very specific to the audience that we have. We are built for a payments platform that's built for small-sized businesses, small business owners particularly, and we try to take the pain out of making those business payments. So the way that we structure our content is very much around addressing their pain points and showing them the value of the product, and also beyond that, showing them the value beyond our services, because we are offering educational content as well, and having that in place so that people can make the choice that they need and the choice that's the best for them.
And how much does data run your daily life?
Very, very closely. So data is, especially now, whereas before, when you have your content strategy in place, it is a multi-layered thing where you put down maybe 1 to 2 quarters ahead, maybe longer. You have your foundational structure in place for your overarching content strategy. You put predictive pieces over the top of that you know are going to come in, the milestones that are pretty much guaranteed through a quarterly cycle. And then on top of that, you have your more current pieces. But right now, the filter of current pieces has been dialed way up. So anything that is happening right now, anything that you need to be very responsive and agile about is definitely in focus. So it is a day-to-day, hour-to-hour tracking of data, and to see where your audience is going and to see what they're looking at and what their behavior is, so that you can respond and then predict from that where you need to be so that you can meet your audiences there.
Right. So we're seeing just in this panel, or I'm sorry, in this cast, that things can get complicated, especially if you're dealing with big data and you're trying to balance influencer marketing, you're trying to balance paid. If you're in a bigger organization, you're balancing different departments. Neil, what's been your experience?
My world's a little different in that I'm not on the brand side, I'm on the publication side. So we work with like so many different brands, right? Every possible industry, small to large. And Aparna mentioned just now audiences. And what we do is we're actually first and foremost concerned with our audience. Like the readers who come to our publication are a certain demographic, a certain audience. And what we try and do is figure out how do we match the brand's messaging with our readers' interests and our readers' audience, so that we can ensure that when our readers come to our site, they actually are interested in reading the content that the brand is investing all this money to create. There's, dollars are valuable, and we want to make sure that if you spend your money, you're spending it on something that's going to achieve some kind of result. And so we've seen time and time again that where the success happens is when you can magically align any business's interests with the interests of our readers. And that's basically what our team does all day, is help brands navigate that murky world and figure that out.
So in the social world, it's not one way, it's two way, right? So there's community management. In the first panel, we talked about responding to your customers and being attentive and those sorts of things, which is the need for authenticity, the need for speed, if as the panelists had put it. That's all part of what you manage on the social side. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Neil, I think this would be a great one for you.
Yeah, so social is key for us at Daily Hive. We a lot of our traffic to our site comes through social, and it just makes sense because our audience is, grew up in that social generation. Like that's where we are used to going to getting our news, getting our updates, finding out what's happening in the world. I'm sure I don't know what the latest research says, but how many times a day are we looking at Facebook? How many times a day are we looking at Instagram? I'm sure the numbers are insanely high, right? Mm-hmm. So, so for us, that community building within our readers is key. It's critical to our success. And if we're not successful, then we can't make your business successful as well. So when it comes to, working with brands as well, at the end of the day, we just want to make sure that what we put out there is stuff that our social audiences are going to relate to, going to want to engage with, going to want to comment on, going to want to share. And it's a lot of those metrics that at the end of the day, we then can report back to our clients. And I know, like, for them, that's key. Like, they always want to know how it performed on social, and we're happy to report that data.
Aparna?
And it does depend. It depends on where your audience is going. Like for REMITR, our audience is on our blog. By far, that's where our numbers are. And it's a very different approach. And also, when you're looking at your data, for example, a lot of people post the beginning of the lockdown saw a shift. They almost saw a reversal in where their traffic was coming versus mobile versus desktop. For us, our mobile actually went up. Historically, our audience has been mostly on mobile, but when you're tracking it that closely and you start noticing the shift that, hey, yes, people are coming at you in a different way, but their behavior is also shifting. People don't have as much bandwidth as they do. They're spending longer per session, but their time per page is shorter. So
Aparna, why is it that you saw that shift to mobile? I would assume that it would be people on desktop because we're all locked down.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I was looking for. But there wasn't a material shift. So we had already been at something like 65, 67% mobile, and we ticked up to 70. So it was something that was really interesting for us. So versus people that shifted into much more long form content, much more in depth, we kept going the way we were because it was really showing an uptick because people were still finding value in that mode. But it's one of those things where, yeah, social proof is great, but don't go blindly, right? Make sure that you're looking at your data as well.
Real quick before Swish jumps in, because I just saw his face, he's probably trying to press me on time. Any metrics, tactical metrics on what you saw Android versus iPhone in any of your data?
Neil?
We haven't seen any iPhone Android shifts necessarily, but I agree that we didn't see the shift from mobile to desktop either that we thought we might see. Desktop grew a little bit, but nothing like I was anticipating. What we did see was people accessing our sites at different times of day certainly shifted pre-pandemic to now. So whereas we traditionally would be very heavy in the later evening hours in terms of traffic to our site, now that's shifted earlier. So people are coming in, those peak hours have jumped ahead maybe 2-3 hours earlier in the day now. And we also are a little bit more balanced weekend to weekday. So the week, we still see more traffic during the week than weekends, but the contrast is not as stark as it was before.
Absolutely.
Okay, interesting.
There has
So
been a
last question.
gentling of the curve.
Yeah, exactly. Interesting stuff that we need to take a look at. So in terms of measurement, how do you measure content? So, we started with, the really sexy stuff with the influencer marketing, the really important stuff with the paid and how you do it. We're talking umbrella. How and what do you measure from, a 30,000 foot level? Maybe you want to start off, Aparna. What are you measuring? How do you measure it and why?
Measuring the heat maps essentially right now, looking to see where the audience is going, where you're getting the traffic, and what the pattern is then, not just where they go, but then where they go after that. So that's where you start to kind of get into the predictive side of it, to get ahead of it and see if you can meet the audience there before they even get there, right? And one of the interesting things is on our site, on our content, we noticed a general shift where content that had been touched very lightly before automatically started spiking after the lockdown. So started to dig into what that data meant. Why is the interest shifting in such a polarizing way when people are spending less time per page, but they're definitely showing more interest in one area versus the other? These are areas that might not have been top of mind pre-lockdown, areas that people probably didn't give as much intention or time to. But now when we're sitting down and saying, oh, I've got nothing but time, people are at once more risk averse and less so. So it's finding that balance and finding out what's flipping it. That's really driving the content that we make right now.
Yeah, and hey, Swish, I think that it would be nice to do some another panel on analytics and dive deep into the weeds of what that really means, because I think it's important for any business. I think that there are tools out there that can talk to what Aparna was just mentioning, which I think is how do you mine the data that is available or could be available to you? So Malik, I'm sorry, Neil, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would agree. Whenever we have a client that works with us and, you want to make sure, the big question is, I'm spending money on content. How do I know it's working, right? And so for us, we measure it just using some, the key basic ones that we look at is like how many people have looked at your content, how long are they spending reading that content. We can get into how far down the article they read in terms of percentage. We measure the clicks off the content to whatever landing page or pages you've set up for yourself. We can tell the geography they're coming from. Like, there is a whole host of analytics that we can look at, and then we pump all that into a dashboard so that anyone who's spending money, they can see in real time how that content's performing, and then we're always there to help translate that to what that means.
Yep. So bringing it full circle, I think when you think of full funnel marketing and content in general, it's not easy. It's not simple. There are components to it that are complex. And yeah, let me turn it back over to you, Swish. Any questions?
Perfect. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. Getting into the questions really quickly. So, Abhijit, you asked actually a couple of questions. So I want to get through them. They're all great. Number one, how do you guys evaluate the effectiveness of some piece of content versus the other? Do you normally take a look at it on a more one-off basis, or do you take a look at it over time in terms of whether this works and whether that doesn't work?
I think it's both. The content game tends to be a long-term play. So sometimes you want to see an immediate uptick because it's a more timely topic. But other times you want to see what the trajectory is. You want to see that it's sustained. It's not just a blip on the radar. And that does take time, right?
Yeah, it's definitely both. We, like in my career, I've probably put out hundreds and hundreds of individual pieces of content. So over time, I have a good sort of idea of, is this average time on page good or is it bad, right? Just based on a benchmark that you can establish across, many data points. So we look at that for one thing. But then also, if one particular industry or one particular client is running a series of content, you can evaluate each of those pieces against each other.
Cool.
Yeah, and I think for me, Swish, it's really bringing that under an umbrella in a strategy that you have your awareness pieces. You can retarget to, more mid-funnel, and they all need to work together. So if I have a top of funnel awareness piece, I want likes. So I gather that audience. They have some affinity for some reason. I did my job right. Mm-hmm. Then I target them with, from a marketing perspective, more informational pieces, right? Cool. And then move them further down the funnel. And the holy grail is to have them be advocates at the end of the day, right? That's what it's about.
Got it. Next question is around blog posts for SEO. So the question is, having optimized a blog post for SEO using the right keywords, what would be the next step towards ranking it for keywords?
Let me speak to that first. So at a Fortune 500 company, we actually had a team that's all they did. And it's as much a science as a workout, as an art form. And as one of the panelists had said earlier, it's the changing algorithms of Google, et cetera. I think it's really tough. That's all I have to say. I'm not an expert in it, but I know it's tough.
Yeah, I would echo that. SEO is an art in itself. There are people that specialize in that for their entire career, and for good reason, right? Because I agree that any piece of content you are putting out there, it's really smart to think about SEO, and you want to make sure that, for us, we measure how much traffic comes in through search, and it is significant. So creating content that's searchable, for example, we did a piece of content last Christmas for a client, and they're a retailer, and so we did these gift guides, which isn't a super original idea for content, but we did this one, and the one in particular that outperformed every other piece was gift suggestions for your office Secret Santa. That piece just really crushed it. And the good news for that client is, as long as that piece stays live every following year, people will search and people will find that article, and they'll continue to get that exposure over and over again. So, those kinds of search friendly pieces are, if you can pull it off, really work well. Amazing.
So final question, I think this is actually a good way to kind of end this panel off. Irina asked this question for the previous panel, so I saved it for this one. She was asking if you guys have advice around approaching messaging in this time to give people confidence, because it's very hard, obviously, to be blatantly advertising to people during a time where there's so much uncertainty and people are going through a really difficult time. So how do you guys go about fine-tuning your messaging so you're coming off as empathetic and you're approaching your messaging to give people confidence during this time?
Absolutely. I think right now everybody's kind of, or at least hopefully should be, sitting back from the entire push marketing. Nobody wants to be hit in the face with a really aggressive, you too can have this product for $19.99 kind of deal. Those times are definitely behind us at the moment. And this, I know people say that in this present circumstance, in this reality, but the fact of the matter is, this is our new way of operating, and we need to stop behaving as if this is temporary. We need to kind of dig in and say, okay, this needs to be the pivot that we're in right now. And the best way to do that is to come across with sincerity. For example, with us from REMITR, we are built for small businesses. And the one thing that we did as a business that provides a service is to figure out how we can be of service to our community and to our customers, trying to be altruistic without making it feel gimmicky. But very much so, the words authenticity and sincerity, they resonate with people for a reason, because that's what they're looking for and that's what they need right now.
One of the rules that I always have when I'm trying to create content for someone is, can you create a piece that provides value to the reader in some way, shape, or form? People aren't coming to our site to be sold to. They're coming to learn new things, read things, find out what to do, entertain themselves, whatever it might be. So the content that you create as a brand has to do one of those things as well. That's a rule that applied way before this pandemic ever arrived, and I think still applies today. So I actually, to be really simple about it, the strategy doesn't shift now from before. It's still, the golden rule applies, is how can you create something that someone would read and take some value away from it, and then you're hitting the right notes.
And when it comes to trust, just to kind of address that piece, I think, again, just like Neil said, the strategy doesn't change. Anything that comes across as saying, oh, you can trust us, automatically puts someone on the back foot and be like, oh, why are you telling me I can trust you? Speak with authority, speak your truth, speak the intent of your product as authentically as you can, as sincerely as you can. And that in and of itself will build that trust for you.
Perfect. All right, on that note, thank you to Michael for moderating that panel. Aparna and Neil, really appreciate your time as well and sharing your insights. That wraps up the event, but if you're tuning in, just stay on for 2 or 3 more minutes, because we're going to have the DMZ and RDB give closing remarks, and they'll tell you a bit more about what's happening after the event so you can continue to stay plugged in. So I'll turn it over to Hasib. If you want to get started on that, that would be great.
Thanks, Wish. We'll actually be calling up Natasha Campania, the Director of Marketing Communications at the DMZ.
Sorry, I was on mute. Oh, can everybody hear me? I think I'm okay. Thank you everyone who joined today's event from far wide. I think we had an awesome turnout. We had over 300 people RSVP for this event today. So thank you all for joining us. It was a pleasure to partner with Trufan and RDB Agency for the second time on this virtual event series. Thank you to all the panelists. I think you had so much passion when you talked, and I think everyone learned something new today that we can all apply to our day-to-day work. If the DMZ can be of any support to any of the founders on this call, please feel free to reach out to us. We have our application for our accelerator program ending on July 15th, but we have our incubator program that has a rolling application period. So if we can be of any help to anybody on this call, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you all for tuning in.
Great, Swish. Thank you for hosting this series. It's an awesome partnership. And if anybody wants to reach out, just Google us at rdb.agency. You'll find contacts there. Anybody that needs help, guidance, assistance, we're always here to help. Thank you for this, Swish.
Lovely. No worries. Thank you guys as well. And guys, if you guys are looking for the recording of the event, it'll be sent over email with a bunch of resources, so check your email in the next few days. But thanks again for attending. We really appreciate it. Have a wonderful Thursday.
Thanks.
Thanks.